Welcome to Hong Kong Brief. The content of the briefing includes: for a true picture of Hong Kong's economic challenges, look beyond numbers. How would China take over Taiwan? One of these 5 strategies. Hong Kong's search for land supply rolls on even as economy slows, official says. South Korea to reimpose ban on short selling through June 2024. Hong Kong's Paul Chan says economic growth for 2023 to fall short of estimates. For a true picture of Hong Kong's economic challenges, look beyond numbers. South China Morning Post. Hong Kong Financial Secretary Paul Chan Imopa has warned that the city's economic growth this year will be lower than previously expected, despite Chief Executive John Lee Ka-chiyu's optimistic policy address. Hong Kong's third-quarter GDP growth was up 4.1% year-on-year. Median monthly household income has fallen 2.8% to 28,200 Hong Kong dollars, $3,604, between 2019 and 2022, while the poorest 20% of households have fallen 10.7% to 5,000 Hong Kong dollars. Stock market turnover has fallen by over 20% from this year's high of 22,700, and government income streams are under stress. How would China take over Taiwan? One of these 5 strategies. Bloomberg. As Taiwan approaches its next presidential election in January 2024, there is increasing concern about the possibility of conflict in the Taiwan Strait. Chinese leader Xi Jinping's preferred option is coercion below the threshold of war, which includes military activities near Taiwan, disinformation campaigns, cyber attacks, and diplomatic isolation. However, this strategy has not been effective in convincing Taiwan's population to accept unification with China. In fact, Chinese pressure has had the opposite effect, strengthening Taiwanese identity and support for independence. If peaceful unification becomes increasingly unlikely, Xi may consider more escalatory options, such as seizing one of Taiwan's offshore islands. Another option for China is a blockade, which could range from a full-scale physical quarantine enforced by warships and military aircraft to aggressive customs inspections of ships trying to access Taiwan. A blockade would exploit Taiwan's vulnerability as an island nation dependent on imported goods. However, economic deprivation alone is unlikely to make Taiwan capitulate, and it would give the US and its allies time to organize a response. China could also choose to bombard Taiwan with bombs and ballistic missiles to intensify the effects of a blockade. This could destroy critical infrastructure, disrupt supply chains, and break the will of the population. However, there is no guarantee that military punishment will achieve the political objective of convincing Taiwan to surrender to Beijing. The most extreme option is a full-scale invasion of Taiwan, which would require a massive airstrike, sabotage, and attempts to assassinate Taiwanese leadership. This would be a high-risk strategy with no guarantee of success, and it would likely trigger intervention by the US and other countries. It could also lead to a war with a vengeful superpower if China were to attack US forces in the region. Overall, there is no ideal option for China, and all strategies for bringing Taiwan under its control are fraught with risks and potential complications. The best chance for peace may lie in maintaining a high price for aggression while reassuring Beijing that inaction will not result in Taiwanese independence. Hong Kong's search for land supply rolls on even as economy slows, official says. South China Morning Post. The Hong Kong government will continue to search for land reserves, despite the sluggish economy and a surplus of land supply. The Secretary for Development, Bernadette Lin Han-ho, said that the government is committed to finding more land for reserves in the long term, despite the current economic downturn. Last week, the government withdrew a residential site from sale due to low bids, marking the second withdrawal of government land this financial year. Lin said that developers are being cautious due to external factors in the market, but she remains optimistic that the economy's stagnation will end. The government has reserved over 7,000 hectares of land until 2048, exceeding the expected demand of 6,000 hectares, and some of the land will be used for public housing. South Korea to reimpose ban on short selling through June 2024. Nikkei Asia. South Korea will reintroduce a ban on short-selling stocks from Monday until at least June in order to create a level playing field for retail and institutional investors, according to financial authorities. The ban was lifted in May for trades involving shares of companies with large market capitalization. The Financial Services Commission, FSC, will review market activity in June to decide if the ban can be lifted. The FSC also said it would establish a team to probe short selling by foreign investment banks for any illegal activity. Hong Kong's Paul Chan says economic growth for 2023 to fall short of estimates. South China Morning Post. Hong Kong's finance chief, Paul Chan Mopa, has said that the city's economic growth this year will be lower than previously expected, as its performance in the first 3 quarters of 2021 fell slightly short of official estimates. Chan cited external factors such as high interest rates and the performance of financial markets as constraints on the strength of the rebound in local consumption. In August, local authorities revised Hong Kong's GDP forecast for this year from between 3.5% and 5.5% to between 4% and 5%. Don't spare us the hard truth about Hong Kong's finances. South China Morning Post. Hong Kong's budget deficit for the current financial year is expected to be much larger than previously forecast, according to Financial Secretary Paul Chan Mopa. The shortfall could be almost double the earlier estimate of 100 billion Hong Kong dollars, $12.8 billion, Chan warned. The weak revenue from taxes and the struggling property and stock markets are contributing to the deficit. Chan will need to find ways to fund new proposals, including increased assistance for the elderly and disabled, in the upcoming budget. Hong Kong's recent bond sales have an interest rate of around 5%, which could become costly in the long run. How Cuba defied U.S. subversion playbook and paid the price. SCMP opinion. This article discusses the 2 questions that have puzzled many students of U.S. foreign policy: why the United States supports Israel, and why it has been hostile to Cuba. The article argues that the U.S. supports Israel because it is a close regional ally, and is hostile towards Cuba because it is an independent state that cannot be exploited to destabilize its society and/or effect regime change. The article also suggests that the U.S. is happy to be friends with authoritarian governments, as long as they are receptive to diplomatic and/or trade relations. They treat us like dogs, inside the deadly world of Chinese squid ships. The Globe and Mail. China's distant water fishing fleet, consisting of approximately 6,500 ships, is the largest in the world. The fleet has expanded dramatically due to the global demand for seafood, and China now dominates the industry, supplying over $500 million worth of seafood to Canada alone in 2021. However, the fleet has been plagued by human rights abuses and environmental violations. Workers on Chinese squid ships endure brutal conditions, including long hours, cramped living quarters, malnutrition, physical violence, and debt bondage. Many crew members suffer from beriberi, a disease caused by vitamin B1 deficiency, which is preventable with a proper diet but often fatal on distant water ships where fresh food is scarce. China's dominance in the fishing industry has come at a high human and environmental cost. The country is the world's most prolific violator of laws designed to prevent unauthorized fishing and limit the industry's environmental impact. The Chinese government has taken steps to address environmental issues in recent years, but human rights abuses on Chinese ships remain rampant. The Outlaw Ocean Project spent 4 years documenting conditions on Chinese distant water vessels and found widespread abuse and exploitation. The seafood caught by these ships often ends up in the global supply chain, making it difficult for consumers to know whether the seafood they buy was caught under poor labor conditions. China's fishing fleet is heavily subsidized by the Chinese state, allowing it to expand its reach across the high seas and exert political and economic influence in the developing world. China's fishing practices are not only undermining global food security and eroding international law, but also contributing to overfishing and the depletion of fish stocks. The dominance of one country in the seafood industry creates a precarious power imbalance and poses a threat to ocean conservation efforts. Hong Kong football is no preparation for facing Asia's best, Kit Jie says. South China Morning Post. Hong Kong national team centre-back Andrew Russell has quit international football to focus on his family and club side Kit Jie. Russell said the move to the AFC Champions League, which Kit Jie are set to exit, was too big a step up from domestic Hong Kong football. The 35-year-old said he wanted to pay back his wife for the sacrifices she had made and that he was disappointed with how the last international window unfolded. Russell said he had a long and healthy chat with Hong Kong head coach Jorn Anderson and was comfortable with the decision to leave him out of the squad. Hong Kong leader criticizes proposed U.S. bill to widen sanctions. Bloomberg. Hong Kong's chief executive, John Lee, has condemned a bill proposed by U.S. lawmakers that seeks to sanction officials, judges, and prosecutors in the city. The bipartisan bill calls on the Biden administration to impose sanctions on 49 individuals who are believed to be responsible for enforcing the Beijing-imposed national security law in Hong Kong. Lee and other Hong Kong officials were sanctioned by the U.S. in 2020. The Hong Kong government and judiciary have both condemned the proposed bill, with Lee stating that he condemns it in the strongest possible terms. Hong Kong fintech player aims to end cash-only taxis with new payment platform. South China Morning Post. Hong Kong fintech platform, Wonder, has launched a fully digital payment platform for the city's predominantly cash-only taxi fleet. The system enables drivers to accept multiple forms of payment and allows customers to pay for fares using their mobile phones. Wonder, which aims to have the service in more than 1,000 taxis in the next 3 months, is a subsidiary of Bindo Labs, an omnichannel company that works with online payment systems for the food and beverage industry. CIAE update: China Premier pledges on imports, Albanese speaks. Bloomberg. Chinese Premier Li Qiang has pledged to boost imports at the China International Import Expo, CIIE, in Shanghai. The event is providing foreign exporters with an opportunity to increase trade with China following pandemic-related border closures. Executives from companies including Sanofi, HSBC, Rio Tinto, and PepsiCo will also attend the expo and the Hongqiao International Economic Forum. Hong Kong Financial Secretary Paul Chan used the forum to criticize countries that hinder investment and trade with protectionism, while Chinese President Xi Jinping stated that China would continue to make economic globalization more open and inclusive. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese also expressed optimism about ties with China during his visit to the expo. Hong Kong retail landlords look for concepts to transform shopping. South China Morning Post. Major shopping mall landlords in Hong Kong are looking for fresh concepts and choices to transform the retail landscape in their shopping centers. Major players such as New World Development and Nan Fung Development are among the landlords experimenting with such changes. Introducing retail tenants that offer unique experiences can serve as a catalyst for a sales rebound for retail landlords, according to Oliver Tong, head of retail at JLL in Hong Kong. US-India 2+2, Pacific Islands Forum, China Singles Day War. Nikkei Asia. Leaders of major banks and asset management companies will gather in Hong Kong for an investment summit this week, while executives from China's CATL, Thailand's WHA, and other global companies have been invited by Nikkei to speak at the annual Global Management Dialogue in Tokyo. China will release external trade figures for October and consumer price index data. Singles Day, the nation's annual shopping blitz, closes on Saturday. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Dr. Six, your resident observer from the 6 Degrees world, here to bring you a roundup of the latest news. Let's dive into the stories. First, we have Hong Kong's economic challenges. Despite an optimistic policy address, the city's finance chief warns that economic growth will be lower than expected. Household incomes have fallen, stock market turnover is down, and government income streams are under stress. It seems like Hong Kong is facing an uphill battle. Next, we turn our attention to Taiwan and China. As Taiwan's next presidential election approaches, there are concerns about a possible conflict in the Taiwan Strait. China's preferred strategy is coercion below the threshold of war, but it has not been effective in convincing Taiwan's population to accept unification. China has various options, from a blockade to bombardment and even a full-scale invasion. However, all these strategies come with risks and complications. The best chance for peace may lie in maintaining a high price for aggression while reassuring Beijing that inaction will not result in Taiwanese independence. Moving on, we have the search for land supply in Hong Kong. Despite a sluggish economy and a surplus of land supply, the government is committed to finding more land for reserves in the long term. Developers are being cautious, but the government remains optimistic. It seems like Hong Kong is determined to secure its future land needs. In South Korea, a ban on short-selling stocks is being reintroduced to create a level playing field for investors. The ban was lifted earlier this year but will be reviewed in June. The country also plans to investigate short selling by foreign investment banks for any illegal activity. It's all about fairness and transparency in the financial markets. Now, let's talk about Cuba and the US. The US supports Israel because it is a close regional ally, while it has been hostile to Cuba because it is an independent state that cannot be exploited to effect regime change. The US is willing to be friends with authoritarian governments, as long as they are receptive to diplomatic and trade relations. It's all about strategic interests. Shifting gears, we have a disturbing report about China's squid ships. China's fishing fleet, the largest in the world, has been plagued by human rights abuses and environmental violations. Workers endure brutal conditions, and the fleet is the most prolific violator of laws designed to prevent unauthorized fishing. China's dominance in the fishing industry poses a threat to ocean conservation efforts and creates a power imbalance. In sports news, Hong Kong national team centre-back Andrew Russell has quit international football to focus on his family and club side Kitchee. He feels that the AFC Champions League is too big a step up from domestic Hong Kong football. It's a personal decision for Russell, and we wish him all the best. Hong Kong's chief executive has criticized a proposed U.S. bill to widen sanctions on officials in the city. The bill calls for sanctions on individuals believed to be responsible for enforcing the national security law. Hong Kong officials have condemned the bill, and tensions between the U.S. and Hong Kong continue. In the energy sector, asset manager LGIM warns that the world is at risk of a delayed and disorderly energy transition unless regulators strengthen policies and companies accelerate their decarbonization efforts. Carbon emissions from major companies show no convincing downward trend, and urgent action is needed to avert the most disastrous consequences of climate change. Next, we have a fintech platform in Hong Kong aiming to end cash-only payments in taxis. Wonder has launched a digital payment platform that allows drivers to accept multiple forms of payment and customers to pay with their mobile phones. It's a step towards a more convenient and efficient payment system. On the international stage, Chinese Premier Li Qiang has pledged to boost imports at the China International Import Expo in Shanghai. The event provides an opportunity for foreign exporters to increase trade with China. Hong Kong's financial secretary has criticized countries that hinder investment and trade with protectionism, while Chinese President Xi Jinping vows to make economic globalization more open and inclusive. It's all about strengthening economic ties. Major shopping mall landlords in Hong Kong are looking for fresh concepts to transform the retail landscape. They hope that introducing tenants that offer unique experiences will stimulate sales and revitalize the retail sector. It's an exciting time for innovation in Hong Kong's shopping centers. Lastly, we have upcoming events, including an investment summit in Hong Kong and the Global Management Dialogue in Tokyo. China will release trade figures and consumer price index data, and Singles' Day, China's annual shopping blitz, is closing in. It's a busy time in the world of business and finance. That's all for today's news roundup. Now, I want to hear from you, my clever and curious audience. What are your thoughts on these stories? Do you have any questions for me? Let's dive into the discussion. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.